Before the first paddle hits the water, every Great Boundary Waters trip starts with a great plan. Here's how I do mine. First website that I use is BWCA.com, or the Boundary Waters website. This website has a ton of great information, from entry points to trip reports to outfitter info. The list goes on and on. I'll give you a quick run through of that one. And then the second website that I use is Paddle Planner, and I kind of go back and forth between them, comparing different routes, seeing different mileages, coming up with different ideas. So starting off with Boundary Waters website. This website's free. You can create a login if you want to use their message board, or you can browse all their features without logging in. First spot I normally go to, and you can actually get to it either through planning or through maps and entry points, is the BWCA entry points. If you click on that, it'll take you to a separate menu where it's going to list out all of the different entry points. You'll notice they do go in numerical order. They do skip. Some entry points have been closed, opened over the years, or changed around a little bit. So what you'll see here is it has an entry point number, and then a name, and then the daily permit quota. And that's how many permits are given out per day during the permit season. And then it has permit type, which is overnight paddle or motor for this lake, which means that motors are allowed on this lake, or overnight paddle only, which would mean that there's no motors allowed, and that would be a paddle access only lake. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom where the lettered entry points are, you'll see that these are all day use motor permits, which would mean that you would have to draw a permit ahead of time in order to launch a motor boat on those lakes. So we'll click on an entry point here, and it'll take us to a little overview of just that entry point. It'll tell us again how many permits are available, what type it is, and then also the closest ranger station. In the past, ranger stations used to print out permits. I believe last year it was all done by the outfitters due to budget cuts. Not sure what's going to happen in the future with that, so that ranger station information is a little outdated potentially. So then it brings us to the next part, entry point notes. Once again, 5 entry permits granted per calendar day. Permit season is May 1st to September 30th. It has access through 160 rod portage heading north from the Echo Trail. Some of these will be right from a launch. Some of these have different instructions on where the entry point actually is. And then we can scroll down, and at the bottom of that, we will actually see some trip reports based off of this entry point. These trip reports are a great resource. They're reports from people that have done this entry point exactly before. You can scroll through, see pictures, see their experiences, see how their fishing was, see how their weather was for different times of the year, and just see if that's the type of entry point that you would want. If we click on View Map, it'll take us to a larger map here where we can see the entry point itself, in this case, entry point 16. Click over on the eye, it will show you all the key features in the map. So red circles are going to be campsites, yellow is going to be portages, and then there's other points available, fishing spots, places of interest, photos, bear sightings, moose sightings, and then lodging and outfitters. So a lot of times what I'll do is when I'm first starting off is I'll just click all 3 of these, and then in order to actually shut off the other points, you actually have to click it off again. So that allows me to clean up the map a little bit, see things a little more clearly as far as the actual route goes. Right now what we're looking for is portages and campsites. That allows us to do is come up with an idea of where this trip starts and where it could end for us. Sometimes it could be a shorter loop, sometimes it could be a longer loop. It kind of just depends on what type of trip we're planning. So now that we've chosen an entry point, we can come over here to Paddle Planner, and that's paddleplanner.com. Paddle Planner is a free website. They do have paid subscriptions that do unlock different features. Makes it a little bit easier to use their route builder. However, I've planned all my trips while using just the free version. So to start off is we're going to go build a route. And these are all the places that they have paddle and portage information for. So today we're going to go to BWCA/Quetico/Voyagers. And this is an overview here of the Boundary Waters. So we're up to the top left corner here. And if we type in 16, sometimes it'll give us the entry point, and other times it won't. So in that case, we'll have to keep filling out the information. 16 is Moose River North. So as we start, it comes up with the autocomplete here, and then we'll click on that. That will take us right to the same spot it did on the Boundary Waters website. Now, some things to clear up on this map right away. We have to go to Settings, and we go to Route Builder Settings. Sometimes this will load into metric, sometimes it'll load into imperial units, which will count in rods for distances, and also miles. You can switch between whatever one you want. It also has speeds based off of paddling, based off of your skill set, and then also off of how many times you plan on portaging. Single portage, you'd pick up all your gear in one trip across the portage and you'd have everything you need there. Double portage would be you'd pick up half your gear, go across the portage, set it down, come back, grab the other half, and then bring it all the way over. Triple would be 3 times across, and then custom would be for any other type of circumstance. Flow modification, if you know that the rivers are going to be high and you're taking a river route, you can use that to help you plan out any type of currents. And then you can also set minimize here to time or distance, whether you want to be the quickest or you want to be the shortest distance. Normally that won't matter, but there are times that it does. Another option to select here too is route types. And this will matter sometimes, but not all the time. It really depends on what hiking trails are around. If you want to use paddle and portage only, which is what I do, it will not use hiking trails. Okay, and then we can save that as our default settings. Now, how we use Paddle Planner, we have our zoom on this side. This P is actually the entry point, parking. We are going to click on parking, and that will be one end of our route. And then say we were going up here to Lake Agnes, and our goal was to get to this campsite. You click on that campsite, and it's going to build the route based off the parameters we gave it. So in this case, it's going to be 11.6 total miles, 8 miles of paddling, 3.5 miles of portaging. And it's estimating that it's going to take 5 hours and 12 minutes. Now on the free plan, we can't just add that point and go to another one. That's part of their paid program. However, we could write this down and then hit clear map and then click on that same site to the next site, and it'll build a separate route from there to there. So you could build day trips or you could build different legs of your loop. It all depends on how you plan on tripping. The higher levels of subscription you go with Paddle Planner, the more you'll unlock. Now, some of these sites that have the little squares on them will have some information with them. In this case, it's just 3-star and 1 tent pad. That's based off of other people's reviews of the site. If you were to have their subscription plans, you could click on that site and get more information. Another great feature about Paddle Planner is they have icons. In this case, this is a lookout spot. It's called Top of the World. That's right alongside the river. You have to get out of your canoe, obviously, but you can hike up this small mountain and you have a great overlook of Nina Moose and the surrounding area below. So we'll clear the map of our previous route, and we'll start drawing this out again. Click on the parking. That way it'll include our starting portage. And let's say we only wanted to go down to Nina Moose. So we're going to click Nina Moose. It's going to give us 5.4 miles, 3.3 total paddling, 2.1 portaging, 2.5 hour travel time. Now what we can do is head back over to the Boundary Waters website. So if you click on the red dot and hit View Camp Detail, it will bring up other members' comments about this campsite. It's incredibly helpful to understand some of the campsites that you may be going to. And it also allows you to have a priority campsite that you want to get to and then kind of come up with a ranking. That way, when you first get onto the lake, you can know, hey, this is my first priority. If that's taken, I want to go to this one instead of having to paddle around the lake and check every campsite. So a lot of these campsites, especially in the higher use areas, will have a lot more comments. And then you can make your determination off of what you like about that campsite from there. You'll also notice some photographs here where you can kind of see what other people's experience was. Now, as we go back to the main page, if you log in, you can also see the campsite rating. I found that the ratings can be a little skewed actually in the negative direction. I don't know if it's a rounding error or issue. We've gone to some sites that didn't have great grades that ended up being really great sites and actually came highly recommended. I wouldn't put too much stock into the rating. I would make my own rating off of the comments and any pictures I can see of that campsite. There can be times that campsites aren't always this close, so it's a good idea to know how far apart the campsites are and if the best campsite for you might actually be the one that you've already passed. Then back over to the Boundary Waters site, if you click on planning, you'll see basic information and FAQ, answer a lot of questions there, info about permits, the entry points which I've gone through. If you're looking for gear rental or outfitters, you'll find everything you need here. There is actually a separate tab just for outfitters, and you'll see an entire list kind of broken down based off of where they're located. You'll see this list here off the Gunflint Trail. That services more the east and central side of the Boundary Waters. And then you'll see the Ely and Western Boundary Waters group here. That services mostly the west side. The Sawbill area is eastern and southern. And then if you're looking for guides, there's information there also. If you have any questions about what any of these outfitters offer, you can click on the link, you can give them a call. Every outfitter that I've dealt with has been extremely helpful. If you're looking for lodging, some of these outfitters offer bunkhouses or other forms of lodging. Sometimes you can camp at them. There's also hotels and other options there also. Now, another great aspect of this website is actually the message board. All their titles are pretty accurate. If you're looking for recipes, if you're looking for ideas on trip planning or fishing or what type of gear, all these members here are glad to answer your question. There is a search option up in the top corner. Any question you might have probably been answered before, you can search for it there. This whole forum here is a wealth of information. I've learned a lot. So that's kind of a nuts and bolts overview of how I plan my trips. The next video, we'll talk about different factors that you need to take into account when you're planning your trip.